some way, shape, or form. And
Right, but can I ask why do you think the ought exists? What's behind the ought?
what I'm saying is the ought is essentially the is, intertwined with the
Right.
is, cannot inseparable with the is, with the be,
So,
with the being
okay.
itself.
So if I was going to say it in my turn, so the desire to live um, is overriding. It's like a some sort of imperative, right? So we have a desire to live from nowhere, as far as I know, right? But then I would say the desire to live is based on the desire for the pleasure pain principle, right? So we desire pleasure and we move away from pain. Those are the two principles in which existence or human existence predicated. Would you agree with that?
That may be one of the manifestations of such. I wouldn't say it's exactly reducible to pleasure and pain. I would say it's a bit more complicated than that. And with my examples, I'm not trying to reduce it either. But that could be. I would agree
Mm.
that that's one of the manifestations of such.
See, I would say that's the most simplistic, most basic drives. I'd say not there's nothing beyond that. We simply exist,
Correct.
and then that is our driving force to move away from pain and towards play.
But
There's not,
I
and
would
everything my morality is based on that.
okay, but I would say that there are other driving forces rather than moving toward pleasure and moving away from pain, such as the driving force to perpetuate life.
Okay,
Pleasure may
but
be a way to get you to perpetuate life, but there is a driving force to perpetuate life.
let me think.
While you're thinking, may I ask why I have the roll poopy head?
Everyone has that role. There's literally like I think if you look at Brandon, I think he probably has that, and there's like a few other people. And he's a moderator here, so it's not disrespect. It's just people.
Yeah, it
Right.
was meant. It was meant to be disrespectful for you though when you were given that role.
Thank you very
Oh,
much. I
Everybody
greatly
else is just a
appreciate it.
joke. No
if you look at
problem, man.
What's
if you look at
cock?
mine, I have no idea, Terry. But if you look at my role,
You
I
just
have
noticed your
sheep
cockerel.
cockerel.
Cock.
I gave that to you ages ago.
Yeah, I've got sheepshagger role. So you know,
That's one that you select yourself.
shut up. Don't tell everyone. Jesus Christ. Shut up. Yeah. Anyway, back to the arguments.
Yeah.
So let me think. So we were saying that the idea of reproduction. So if you didn't reproduce, you would feel that you haven't fulfilled some sort of life purpose. So you would suffer. If you feel you have, then you would. There's pleasure involved in it. I can't see it in any other way other than pleasure and pain. I mean, everything can be reducible to it. I don't, I don't see what's
Well,
behind it.
I would say that you don't have to reproduce in order to perpetuate life. The perpetuation of life can be manifested in many different ways.
Hmm.
Well,
Well,
that's another
can I
driving
ask you another
force, as I would
question?
say.
Okay, let me ask you another question. Is there such thing as a selfless act? Something in which you do and you seek no reward. You've done it like an altruistic act. Do you believe in altruism?
So the general idea, yes, but there's always things that you need to specify, right? When it comes.
That's a fair. That's okay. I thought you were going to bite the bullet on that, but fair play. Yeah, I don't believe in altruism. I believe in transactionals, egoism. So the idea that you only act in your self-interest, or no matter what you do for other people, you're only either escaping pain of guilt or feelings of like you ought to do something, and you gain pleasure from it. It's either one of those. I don't see any other
Yeah, but
action in life.
could you not rationally override this, even if you had these
I mean,
inclinations?
you could, but then what benefit would the? Why would you do that? I don't understand what you would
Um,
get out of it.
well, under the idea that good is self-diffusive, um, in order to truly be good, you must give good as well as receive the good. Or what I would say is, in order to receive the good, you must give good, because of the self-diffusive nature of the good innately. And so I would argue on a more fundamental level that things that are good are self-diffusive and reaching outward and generous.
That just sounds transactional. Just seems like if you're good, then good things will happen to you, right? Is that not what you're saying?
I would say if you are good, you will do good things for other people. Self-diffusiveness is the key term here.
Okay, so to what end though? Is good is something good
As
because it's
much
good?
as you reasonably can do, rationally, right? We also have
Yeah.
we are rational beings, right? And so I think it's not as simple as there is a mix. I do think that a lot of what we do is transactional, and I would agree that there's a large part of us that is transactional rationally, but I would say that good generally happens to be self-diffusive.
I don't know. I feel if I push back on that, you're gonna fall into a tautology, and you're just gonna say good is good because it's good. I, I, I don't want to do that, but I feel like uh, let's get back on
It's
morality.
okay. So this is a good turn back into morality because existence itself is self-diffusive, and how we spread our seed as an example of that. I'm not saying it has to be that way, again manifested in many different ways, but that's one of the most obvious examples, is the perpetuation of life. Reproduction itself is self-diffusive. We create more of us, we multiply, and we don't necessarily have to get anything in return for that in order for that to be good, in order for that to be fulfilling.
Okay, sorry, I'm just typing something. Back with you in a minute. Right, so that does sound like you think that there are altruistic acts or acts that in which you would receive nothing. What about acts in which you would be um, uncompensated for? Acts in which you would be down on the deal, but you would do it anyway for maybe some greater good. Because I feel like was it didn't Jesus say love thine enemy, right? For no reason other than the fact that you would that it's a good thing to do. That isn't that one of the rules of Christianity? Am I cutting out,
Uh,
guys?
sorry, I heard what you said. Um, that is a very specific quote, and there's much more to Christianity than love thy enemy. And there's many different interpretations of what Christ said. They generally lean toward the same idea, which is that it's
Yeah,
not that you submit to your enemy; it's that despite their flaws, you still show
right. But
love toward them.
exactly right. So in the terms that you would get nothing, the idea that you would get nothing back from loving somebody who had done terrible things. You're not getting anything back. You're not getting any love in return. So this would seem to be an altruistic act. But then I don't think that most people would actually engage in this. There seems to be like some high ideal that I've always found interesting in Christianity, but I don't know if it's something that you agree would we should do every day or
Well, um, again, the love doesn't have to be dedicated in such a way that you have to give up anything for it. Again, this is going back to the point that in order to be loved, you must love.
See that again? That just seems more transactional. So
It
I
can
don't
be
know.
interpreted in a transactional way, but just under this
Yeah.
greater view of goodness, it simply is, and it's simply free
Mm.
flowing. And under the
So
Aquinas view of goodness, the bad is simply the absence of good. That is what bad is.
so it's not the antithesis of good. There's no like yin yang. It's just the
Correct.
absence of.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah. I would find a logical problem with that, but okay. It'd be boring to go into. So there was something we were talking about previously. We were talking about the idea of we were saying it's subjective. It comes from our values, and it comes from our application of our values, and like the idea that if you saw something very terrible, bad wouldn't be a good enough word. It has to have another word, and like immoral seems to be the next word along in a series, right? So,
Well,
but
yes,
you disagreed with that, right?
you're correct that there's a difference between something being immoral and something being bad. However, it's not as if immorality is a tier above bad. Rather, they're in categories of their own. Morality has to do with intention and has to do with moral agents. And so a thing can be good and not be a moral agent. Something can be good without having any moral agent around it, or observing it. But moral agents commit moral and immoral acts, which can be judged as good and bad, but are nonetheless different. So an animal is not a moral agent, but can perform good or bad. We have the capability of performing immoral acts, which in ways can be worse than just bad in and of itself, because it's intentional evil. It's intentional. It's an intentional absence of the good, as we were referring to earlier.
Mm. So you would say that intent is just as important as the outcome, right? Or
Uh,
would you say intent is more important than the outcome? Because as a utilitarian, I would say the intention is less important than the outcome, although the intention is important.
both are of importance. I would say morality is this complex thing that does. I mean, there are gray areas to morality, and inevitably, as there are gray areas to everything. Not everything is black and white after all. But to answer your question, it's it would depend. I would say if you could give me an example, that would help me greatly.
Well, first off, I just want to say, like, your 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 philosophy's come it's become slightly it's matured slightly since we last spoke. It seems you
Mm-hmm.
seem much more I don't know. It seems more liberal in the way that you were addressing it
Mm-hmm.
last time with deduction and um,
Yeah.
can I ask, have you been reading up or you been thinking about it, or is this the same position I've just misunderstood?
It's the same position. You've misunderstood me.
Okay, okay.
I hate to be blunt, but
No, no, I asked you, and that's fine. That's a fine question. But like, okay. So, what was the question you asked me again? Sorry.
if you could give me an example on what the intention would be and what the outcome would be, and how I could weigh those things, what is more significant?
Okay. So, my intention would be to offer constructive criticism to somebody. I say it in a way that is non-content, and yet the other person takes full offense at what I'm saying. So I have my intention was good. My, my explanation wasn't contentious, yet the other person is absolutely offended at what I'm saying. So I would say in that position, I hold my intent was good, my action was, perfectly executed. Therefore, I hold no moral responsibility for the outcome. And yet, there is still a negative outcome. Would you say in that position that it's moral or immoral?
I would say that while both are important in their own right, both the intention and the outcome are important in their own right, and both should be taken with their own um, context, right? What your intention was moral, and what you did ultimately was moral. Um,
Right. Okay.
if you would like to take a more extreme example, I mean, go ahead.
Well, no, I think I stacked that pretty heavily in favor of one position. So it would seem to me that people hold a subjective view in that one person assumes the outcome is what's it called? I can't remember what it's called now. I literally just fucking watched it today, but I can't remember. It's like so. One person has the idea that what I've just said is immoral. It's what you said is absolutely disgusting and immoral, and yet what I've said, my intention was not to harm, and what I've said is reasonable in my opinion. So who is right in that position? How do we discern
Well,
the moral correctness in an objective
most
sense?
yeah, most objective morality is about things that are much more fundamental than um, forgive me for using this word, petty human interactions. I don't mean to call what you did petty. I just mean it's sort of trivial. So
That's fine.
like
Yeah.
saying what do I mean by that? Saying the truth about something could be in of itself moral because the very faculty of speech inclines towards saying that which is observed and that which is true. And so like on a very fundamental level, what you did could have been perfectly moral under the system observed, under the existence starting as a starting point. And from
So
there,
can I just like I say, so if something's true, then it necessarily follows that it's moral. I misunderstood that. I was a bit
no,
confused
it
when I said
necessarily follows that observing and and pointing out what is true is the moral act, not the what is true in and of itself is moral, but you pointing out the fact that it is true is moral. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess.
Because
Yeah.
because the faculty of knowledge and speech incline towards saying that which is true, saying that which is seen.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so most of this objective morality has to do with fundamental, Aquinas calls it first principles and inclinations towards ends, right?
Yeah, I know.
And so you
Uh,
telling
yeah.
that person, back to the trivial, what I called trivial, it would not necessarily, you telling that person a criticism would not necessarily incline toward anything at all. There are things that don't have
Right.
necessary ends and natural ends. And so when we talk
So
about
even
natural law,
yeah,
that's where the black and
that
white
does sound
stuff
like
is.
I was going to say that it does sound like sort of natural law. But then I was going to say that the fact that you've created more um, less well-being by making that person unhappy. That doesn't account. No, that doesn't account for anything in your position in your worldview.
Well, I would say it's of not much significance simply because if I were to say that there is some sort of objective stance on the well-being of people, you would be led into all sorts of absurdities. Like people feel unwell about all sorts of things, constantly conflicting with each other, and you wouldn't have
Yeah,
any real system. You would just have constant contradiction and hypocrisy, and led into absurdity.
yeah. I guess. Yeah. I need to go get some more beer. Does anyone take over, SD? or do you want to start taking
Yeah,
your
I'm
starting
I'm
point?
here. Sorry.
Yeah, I've literally just got to run up the shop before the bloody thing shuts. Back in a
Um,
minute.
okay. So I missed a little chunk of that because well, I was visiting the can. So what exactly is the disagreement?
I'm not sure we've exactly reached a solid disagreement yet, but we've basically started from the point that things incline towards keeping themselves in existence.
Oh, sure, I was here for that bit, and yeah, I agreed with you.
Yeah, and from there, uh, if you were to say that things do not, they ought not to keep themselves in existence, that would be self-defeating. It would be a performative self-contradiction simply due to the fact that engaging in the act of speech and communication implies that you're keeping yourself in existence and you must keep yourself in existence in order to say it. And so everything that we do it presupposes that we incline towards or need existence as the sort of fundamental level, and that's where I derive my objective morality from, is the inclinations of things toward their natural
Oh,
end.
you're arguing for objective morality.
Yes,
Right. Was that the main thrust of what you wanted to do this evening, or did it just happen to come up? Because, like I said, I've been in and out, so I've missed some of
it
what you
just
said.
it just happened to come up, I suppose.
Okay, so I guess if we nail it down to brass tacks, then right. Why do you think morality is objective? And first of all, can you give me a definition of objective, at least the one that you're working with?
It's immutable, universal, unchanging,
Well,
and
it's definitely
not
not
relative.
universal.
Okay, well, my morality, how I derive my morality would be, and the derivation of that morality itself, encompassing all of existence, would be universal essentially.
I think I'm a bit worried that we're using terms differently here. So just to like hopefully clear this up, can you give me an example of what you would consider to be a immoral act? I guess is a better thing to ask for.
The frustration of the faculty of sex by actively preventing its procreative end.
You mean condoms?
Condoms, sodomy, and so forth.
Right. How is that immoral?
Because sex
I mean, you can
naturally
tell me why
declines
you think it's
towards.
immoral, of course, but how
Sure.
would that be
Uh,
objective?
yeah. Sex inclines toward procreation, the procreative end.
What, in humans?
This is essential in humans. We could use
No, it
humans as an
doesn't.
example.
You're
Yeah. Yes,
already
it does.
wrong. No, it doesn't. The primary function of
Yes, it
sex is
does.
not procreation.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
You're not being scientific.
Oh no, I am being very scientific.
What is the
The primary
primary? What is the
function,
primary purpose?
pleasure. In humans
No,
and
pleasure is a way to.
dolphins, and there's
No,
at least one other species, which I forget right now, but there's two species for you.
no. Pleasure is
Yes.
a way of getting you to the procreative end.
No, no, no. The primary function of
Yeah.
sex in
Yeah.
humans is pleasure. It's not procreation.
No, it's not. It's nature's way of getting you to the procreative end.
No, it isn't.
Yes,
How
it
many
is.
times have you had sex? I mean, I don't want to be overly personal, but how many times have you had sex?
Once.
Okay, how many children do you have?
None.
There you go. Right, you've just refuted yourself.
No, I could admit that I've done something wrong in the past.
Why would it be wrong?
It's because I did not meet the procreative end, and I was frustrating the. It's not just
What
the
what was the
absence of.
negative outcome of that instance of you having sex where you didn't produce a child?
How I define the bad is the absence of good and the frustration of good, and my frustration of the procreative end is bad.
Well, that's your personal opinion, so that's
is
subjective.
contrary. It's not, because existence isn't my personal opinion either, and I started from a point of existence.
What do you mean existence isn't your personal opinion? That doesn't make any sense.
Is it my personal opinion whether or not I exist, and that things incline towards keeping themselves in existence? Is that my personal opinion?
Depends how far you want to push it. Assuming you reject solipsism, then no.
Okay, so what I
Well, do you reject
derive,
solipsism? I reject solipsism. Do you?
I reject solipsism.
Okay, so we agree.
I don't see how this has any. Well, I don't see how that relates.
Well,
Really.
it's because you don't think that you're the only thinking being in the universe, right? You accept that other people exist. Even though we can't,
Correct.
like, there is no falsifier for it. You just accept it because it kind of
And
makes sense.
those two. Okay, but you're implying that other beings don't incline towards keeping themselves in existence. When
No, I never said anything
it's
about that. What are you talking about?
Then why would you bring up solipsism?
To make sure we're on the same page with existence. I'm perfectly happy with you existing, and I assume that you accept that I exist, and that this isn't some like figment of your imagination or something.
Correct.
Sure. So we're on the same page.
We are. And from the idea that beings by their nature incline towards certain ends, and by their faculties incline towards certain ends, which are a part of those faculties, which are a part of their nature, the fulfillment of which conforms to their, I guess you could say, goodness. The perpetuation of life is good, and frustrating the procreative end of sex, frustrating the reproductive end of sex, would be the absence and frustration of the good, and therefore bad.
But I've already rejected that sex. Procreation isn't the primary function of sex in humans and dolphins. There's at least one other, and I forget which it is, but there's two species which that's not true
So
of.
would you like to get into like studies and such?
Yeah,
Because
I would love to, yeah, because if you're going to
this is a
argue
biological fact.
No, where's your study? Go on. If you're going to establish that the
This is
primary
like a
function of
consensus.
sex... Hang on, I wasn't done. I'll let you speak. Let me speak. It's not a consensus because there is no such thing, right? I'm well versed on this topic. The primary function of sex in humans is not reproduction. And
What is it
it's
then?
not in dolphins either.
But what it is then?
Pleasure, I've already said.
I like it.
Sure. Doesn't everybody?
Are there any other animals that masturbate? Just out of curiosity.
Well, monkeys and chimps, except like we're technically them anyway, but I didn't want to go there right now. But,
Normally in captivity.
If he wants to argue that the primary function of sex in humans is to reproduce, he's going to have an incredibly tough time because it just isn't. This is like when people try to argue that the primary function of your penis is to reproduce. No, it isn't. Your primary function of your penis is to piss through. Unless you want to argue that you've had sex more times than you've had a piss. In which case, you're a really lucky boy.
I never said that that the primary function of the penis was to reproduce.
No, I
The primary
didn't
function
say
of
that you
sex
said
is-
that. Yes, I said
I'm just clarifying.
sexual
I don't want
intercourse,
to,
copulation, whatever you want to call it. Yep, where's your study? Because I already know you're wrong.
Fellatio.
Like I say, humans and dolphins, sex is for pleasure. That's the primary function.
I'm back. How are we doing?
Welcome back. Rosso is going to produce a study that says that the primary function of sex among humans is to reproduce, and I know already that it is not.
So
Reproduce.
What's
how
your argument for that?
Wow.
how is
Well, hang on, wait. You were going to produce a study that proved your point, weren't you? Where's the study?
before I do that, I would just want to
Can you do that?
I
You can
will
ask me
attempt
whatever
to
you
do
want,
so.
but
I will try my best to back up my
sure.
statements with
Okay,
science.
fair enough. What was your question?
Okay. Uh, how often the faculty of sex being used equate to its primary function? Uh, just because most people choose to use it that way does not mean that that is the primary function. Sex
It
always
does.
inclines
Otherwise,
towards.
you're gonna have a primary. You're gonna have a definition of primary that is actually secondary.
Okay, let's try to get a bit closer to the same page. Uh, does sex, even when you pursue it for pleasure, not incline towards orgasm and ejaculation, which is for that very faculties for reproduction and procreation? Is that not like a simple fact about our genitals?
Well, it's not a simple fact, but I'm just gonna give you that. So what's next?
Yeah, so like even if you don't accept whatever you mean by primary function, you can at least accept that the sexual faculty inclines towards the procreative end.
No, it doesn't, because look, I don't want to get overly personal or intimate or anything like that, but I'm just gonna have a guess that you've masturbated before. Did you do that with the goal of the pleasure that you derive from it, or did you do that with the goal of having a child?
Whether or not I have the goal in mind,
You're about to undermine your own argument. Go on.
no, I'm not.
No,
No.
it's
Yeah,
true.
you
Everyone's
are.
trying to argue that
Haakon,
the
just hang
genitals
on,
are
hang
the
on. Look, you can talk in a
predominantly
second.
used.
Just hang
You're
on.
just
I'm not
saying the
gonna mute you.
frequency of
No, I'm not
yeah.
saying
You guys
anything
are
like
not
just
in a
that.
because
study
I
with a
have the
Haakon, be
idea,
quiet. Thank you.
just because I have the idea in my mind of what I seek at that moment, does not mean that that's really what the sexual faculty inclines towards. So I still ejaculate uh, semen, which is used for procreation. That is the primary function of semen,
Of
right?
semen, sure, I'll grant you.
Yes, and that inevitably happens. It inclines towards orgasm, inclines towards ejaculation,
Yeah,
which
but the
is
goal with
for
which you did
procreation.
that for was for pleasure, not for
I,
reproduction. All you
I'm
need to
saying
do is
independent
ask
of
anybody
my.
who's had sex more than once and doesn't have any children, and that's a category that you fall into. You've ejaculated more times than you've had children.
That's not my point that I'm making.
No, it's
I'm
my
not
point that I'm
saying that.
making.
Yes, but you're sort of missing my point with your response, because I'm
Okay,
saying
go.
that just because I have this goal in mind at the time does not make that the biological purpose of sex, or the biological end of sex, which is to procreate 99.999% of the time.
It's not 99.999% of the time, though, is it? And you've already admitted that.
No, I'm saying that independent of what we think and what we seek and what we feel is the goal, there simply is procreation, the faculties and the means for procreation taking place, such as the ejaculation of semen.
Sorry, one more time, I didn't catch it. It's not your fault. I broke up at my end.
I said, regardless of what we feel and what we think is the goal of sex, it always inclines towards the means of procreation, which is the ejaculation of semen and such.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that it inclines towards it. I mean, if look, again, I don't want to get overly thingy
Does
because
genital stimulation not incline towards ejaculation? Am I missing something?
no,
Rosso,
it inclines towards ejaculation. Yeah, you're right. But the goal of the ejaculation is not to procreate, and this is true of dolphins as well.
What is the primary function of
I've already said
sperm?
of
Rosso, I
sperm.
would,
We've already been through this. Why are we going around in
guys,
circles?
There's a
no,
difference
guys,
between sperm and
I would just
ejaculation.
want to
Yeah,
bring your
go ahead,
attention to
Sid.
the fact. No, I don't want to take a lot of time. I just want to bring your attention of you guys to the fact that female orgasm plays no role in making babies.
That's also true.
So, what will we take of that? Rosso, that's a
You could
question.
easily argue that biologically the vagina is meant to stimulate the penis in order for it to receive the seed. That's very easy to solve biologically.
No, it
This is
isn't.
a stupid debate because even if something is used often, that doesn't answer the question of whether its purpose is being fulfilled because something can be perverted, right? So you're both talking.
Right, what do you mean by perverted then, Haakon, before you start
Perverted
coming
means
in
that
here
you're
and
using
shouting your mouth
something.
off like you usually do?
Yes, yes, yes. So perversion means that you're using something for the wrong purpose of what it's intended to do.
Right, and
Right.
what's
So,
the
but
what's
so
the
it's not
wrong
just it's begging
purpose?
the question, right?
It's
Because
not
it
begging the
ultimately comes
What do you
down.
mean
question.
by
You don't know what
Because
what do you
begging
mean
the
by
listen,
question
perversion?
is.
it
You are
comes down to
getting
rodents.
muted. Good night. Right, I'll
What does he
unmute
mean by
Haakon in a
intended
minute, but
purpose?
he always does this. He just cheerleads and it kind of gets on my nerves. I'll unmute him in just a minute. But
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'll chat to Haakon after you chat to Rosso if you want. Because I'd like to know what he means by intended purpose. I mean, the best knife is the sharpest knife, I think he means. But anyway, carry on.
well, I'm still waiting for Rosso to post his scientifically peer-reviewed paper that proves that the primary function of sex in humans is reproduction, when I already know for a fact that's not the case, and he hasn't posted anything, at least as far as I can see. So, Rosso, are you able to post that?
Do you understand how sex works and
I
how
do. I
genital
definitely
stimulation?
do. Yeah.
Okay. So you
Got a little
understand
bit
how
of experience with it.
I'm sure you do. You know how genital stimulation does incline towards ejaculation and how
Yeah.
the vagina
So,
is.
where's the paper that you said you were going to post?
I don't need a paper to post, but I will.
You
I will
said
find
you
one
were
for you.
going to post one.
For a basic understanding of sex, do I need a study to show that we need to breathe in order for?
You need a study to show to establish the truth of your
Yeah.
claim that sexual intercourse is the primary function of which is to reproduce, because you said you were going to post that.
Yes, and I am.
Okay.
But I'm saying, do I need a study to prove that we need to breathe?
No, because I'll just accept that, right? That's a claim that I will accept.
Okay.
The other one is not a claim that I'm accepting. So, like, you've got two different claims there.
Haakon leaves. I leave. Sorry.
That's fine. I don't mind if Haakon leaves. You can leave too. It's up to you.
Oh my
Oh
god.
God.
Dick.
Yeah, well.
Okay then.
Wait, has he actually gone?
Yeah,
No,
he's
just
not.
Yeah.
a VD.
Oh dear.
The server. I don't know about.
It's fine. I keep server muting him because Haakon just cheerleads, and cheerleading I find annoying. But anyway, carry on.
I even offered to debate Haakon separately, like after you two had finished, like carry on going, but I don't know. Guess not.
He won't. All he wants to do is cheerlead. He likes to cheerlead people like this. So.
Yeah,
And I mean, for somebody to say, "Oh, if this guy leaves, I'm gonna leave," yeah, big brave badass. What? Like, what the fuck?
Well, he was supposed to be
He,
before.
didn't he
even showed
join
up.
the channel before Haakon anyway, and he was
Yeah,
still
he did.
arguing?
Yeah, he can't say I wasn't reasonable. I was the most reasonable I've ever been in a VC ever with him.
Well,
I was really trying to understand his point. Which
yeah,
I
but
think was very
this
confused.
study, right? It's 10 to 8 p.m. for me now on Tuesday evening. And I bet that 24 hours from now, we don't have that study because it doesn't exist.
Yeah. It doesn't sound intuitively correct that most people have sex to procreate. Was that the sorry? What was the claim?
That was his
Hit me with
claim,
the
yeah.
bro.
That the primary function of sexual intercourse among humans is procreation, which it is not.
Well, the primary function of the primary desire. I don't understand what he's talking
Okay.
about there.
Well, he likes to conflate
He's
terms, but we'll just give him
He
the
was
steel man.
definitely he was absolutely conflating the fuck out of a load of things. And then he gets confused and says that we're not understanding him when he's conflating issues and conflating terms and
Yeah, I know
ridiculous
he doesn't
ways
have
of
that
saying
study. It was about half an hour since he said he could produce that study. And where is it? Is it in any of the channels? Oh no, it's not. What a surprise. Because he's
Yeah.
wrong.
Oh, that was fun.
Hmm.
Let's get another one in here. Anyone else got any fucking
Well,
voice
someone
lines?
new just
He's
joined the
back in
server.
voice
But...
chat
We're
in
gonna
Rosie's
have a
server
steel
now.
cat as well.
Of course he is. He's going to go to somewhere where he's not going to get pushed.
Yeah, he'll go to fucking yeah. I won't say, but he'll go somewhere that I know. And people will be, oh yeah, that's terrible there. They don't know what they're talking about there.
Where
Not some
Hold on, I'll
Kuro's
send
server.
screenshot.
Imagine
so-
saying, Haakon leaves and I leave. It's like, what are you, fucking joined at the hip or something?
Where did that Rosso guy go? I just went
Look in
out.
He left,
general.
sir.
He's in Rosie's server in a voice chat.
Oh, is he?
Fine.
I'll go and join and fucking push him there.
Not
Go on
Rosie.
and invite Esty.
Tell him to come back here and prove his fucking point, because I already know he can.
Rosie server anyway.
I'm
That
gonna,
not
who's he
Rosie.
in with?
That's Rosie.
Sid's joined. Fuck it, I'm joining. I'm backing him in.
I know, so you got Rosso.
Alright.
Really, there's Abraham Rapfajar, who that is.
Well, I mean, lucky for me, that conversation has actually been recorded. So,
Okay.
what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to stop the recording, and I will start